Signs of the Southland, Sunday, March 6th, 2022. Mr. Grant, it was a beautiful weekend on the flats, but I hear you had a bit of an issue with that this week.
Yeah, see, I decided that it would be a great weekend to go and be outside and bike around and all that wonderful Atlanta stuff. And I don't know if it comes up over audio, but yeah, I'm a little sniffly today, my guy. A little
Have you
sniff.
considered just not having allergies?
I have, but I've decided that they really benefit me in other ways, so we're gonna stick with it.
Are you getting superpowers from your allergies?
If superpowers mean snoring like Darth Vader all night, then yes.
I mean, some might consider that a superpower. Some might consider that a force of breathing.
Yeah, was that nighttime too? So real dark side vibes, I guess.
Absolutely. Speaking of dark side, Georgia Tech baseball did face the dark side of the state this week. We'll get to that in a bit. That probably is the headliner of the weekend. But first, let's cover our bases by going around the club sports world, starting with hockey.
Yeah. So hockey was in action this weekend. It was the CHF South or whatever the
CHS, it's Collegiate Hockey South.
so yeah, the how do we say? The 2021 MLB minor league namification of college club sports, a la Triple A West. No, we'll get used to it eventually. They did go 1-1 at the tournament, from what I can tell on Twitter. That includes a 9-5 goal fest. Is a fun way to put that, against Alabama. Yeah, the Horn got a lot of use in that game, but they bounced back with a 4-3 win against Clemson, securing them fifth place. Clemson, they did play several times this year, so gives them the rubber match against the Tigers.
Yeah, they are, like you said, they placed fifth in the tournament. They are still waiting on news about their nationals placement and what their situation is going to look like, excuse me, in that tournament, I believe.
Yep.
How is that national club tournament set up? Do you know? We did not prepare for this question, so if you don't know,
we're new to this league this year, so I'm figuring it out as I go along. I have been writing YJR this afternoon, Yellow Jacket Roundup. For those of you who like the audio format of this, why not also read the abridged written version as well? No, but Tech Hockey, as we said, new league, new format, all that fun stuff. And I don't really know what to tell you about the likelihood of them going to the tournament, to go into the national championship. I don't know if you can do a quick Google search while I'm vamping here, but in terms of
I have it, by the way. I have it
I was in front of 18 and 10. That's not bad. 18.
Here's the problem, though. It's very straightforward to qualify to the Collegiate Hockey Federation National Championship. You got to be top 4 in the conference.
Oh no!
After the tournament, so they win one more game and they probably make it across the hump. I'm not entirely sure what the at-large bid situation is for this tournament. It did not come across in my very quick Googling, but it's unfortunate is what I'll say.
Wow, that's what, not to just
kill the mood,
but that's awful. They were in 4th in the regular season too.
Hey.
Let's see if we can see anything else from the standings. I don't know. I feel like I'm bargaining. I haven't accepted it yet. I'm still in the bargaining stage. But
I can tell you that I don't see a bracket available for the championship, which is apparently called the Federation Cup. So we're just kind of vibing right now. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah,
I don't really know what else to say.
That's tough, but oh well. Oh, well, next year, hopefully next year.
Next year, indeed. So let's move on. No soccer news, no club soccer news this week. There's a bunch of normal soccer news. No women's lacrosse news, but the men's lacrosse team did play some games this weekend. They took their first loss in like recent memory in the regular season. A 1-goal loss, 10-9 to Florida. And then they came back to beat Michigan State by 6, 12-6.
Not to rain on the parade, but they did lose to Clemson like 2 weeks ago, the last time we did a podcast. But that's just me being semantic, I think.
Technicalities also. These are unforeseen complications, at least in the recent era of Georgia Tech lacrosse. And I'm interested to see how the boys put together a string of wins moving forward here.
Yeah, I kind of wish I knew how the Florida Michigan State game shook out, but in terms, because they did play on Saturday, in case that wasn't implied, but
round robin.
I don't know. Maybe Tech has a young team. I know they've been pretty old the last 2 years. I mean, they're off to a pretty solid start. It's just a matter of, getting hot at the right time. You don't have to win all your games, but you just got to win the last one, right? So just a matter of getting to the league tournament and then hopefully the nationals from that.
Yep. We'll keep an eye on it. No need to panic just yet.
Don't hit any big red buttons yet. The season's still quite early, so
this is still only March, as adapted from a John Rothstein tweet. Anyway, moving on to club swim. They were at the South Carolina Invite this past weekend. Not a lot of notable teams other than the aforementioned Georgia Tech club team, but they did secure a victory. Tell us a little bit about their experience.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think I would know more, but quite frankly, I don't. There's not a lot out there in terms of results on the social medias or anything like that. It was a lot easier to find when I was the one doing the live tweeting. That's all I'm going to say. No shame there. But yeah, I mean, South Carolina is a relatively solid team. But in terms of like the Florida, UVA, Ohio States of the world, I don't think Tech's seen any of those since whatchamacallit, the Florida, the regionals. Yeah, regionals. That's what those are. But yeah, no, Florida's still looking scary from what I've seen. So definitely a lot of teams to watch out, especially with not having a real national since 2019. I'm sure hockey can relate to that, and I think lacrosse had a normal tournament last year. But I don't know. The club world has basically been on pause for a lot of sports, at least in an official capacity, for the better part of 3 seasons. So that's basically a whole graduated. That's a whole college lifetime for some folks. So, and there's no COVID eligibility. That's get your degree and leave, please. That's what they told me at least. But
oof.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a couple of sports that do have COVID eligibility and a lot of COVID eligible transfers on both of their rosters. Let's start with softball, who went 1-3 on the week. They collected a nice win versus Kennesaw State earlier in the week, but then took a ACC play opening sweep versus number 13 Duke. What are your opening thoughts on this week and on sort of the 1-3 record?
Not that I think we should have expected a win, but it would have been nice to have one. This Georgia Tech team, and pitching which wins championships or whatever, but this Georgia Tech team has not had the star power on the mound to fend off a ton of these really great teams in a while. So I don't think this was wholly unexpected. KSU, at the original team of Trisha Awald, for those with long memories, has been good in the Atlantic Sun in the past. So and a regular regional participant. So no shame there in a 5-0 win. But in terms of the measuring stick games, I don't think Tech has seen a top 25 win in some time. But it's tough, right? This is a top heavy sport. It's also frustrating. So you do come in and be really good right away. But that's that's the way the cookie crumbles. And they had an opportunity, especially in this last game, to put together some runs only giving up 3 runs to a top 25, top 15 team is pretty good. That's not anything to shake a stick at. It's tough, right? Keep the bats off the board and jumping on pitching. That's a pretty not lightning in a bottle scenario, obviously, because Pitt just beat FSU this weekend. It can happen, but in terms of the FSU, Clemson, and Dukes of the world, you're going to get your shot, and you got to jump at it.
It was really weird.
You were there, so
yeah. I think it was just a really weird couple games, right? I mean, game number 1 on Friday was pretty close until some pitching issues caused Blake Nelman to come out, and then it just sort of melted down a little bit from there. Game 2, it was close at one point. I think Tech brought it within 2, and then it devolved from there later on. And then game 3, I think, is a little misleading from what I saw, and I'd have to go back through the box score and look. But Duke held a pretty healthy 3-zip lead until really, really late. Tech scratched one across, and then the game kind of ended. They kind of ran out of time. I think I agree when you say holding a top 15, literally a top 13 team in Duke to 3 runs in a single game is really impressive and a feat in and of itself, especially since that same Duke team and the announcers on ACC Network Extra were really, really interested in quoting this stat that Duke had averaged 9 runs a game in Shirley Meebourne Clements Field.
They've only played like 6 times. Get some new numbers. Fake news. Boom.
Small sample sizes are predictive, Jake. I've always said this.
That's why my baseball season statistics model has Wake Forest running away with the conference. No losses.
Absolutely. But I think the main point that you mentioned is, okay, look, they had a shot and they didn't take it. I think beyond that is this is not a series that we expect. We expected them to be competitive, which I think if you look at this holistically and not just at the final scores, I think there were spots in which they were competitive in certain innings. Obviously you have to just focus for that, but they were competitive and they just couldn't. They were not clean enough on the mound to limit damage, I think is what it comes down to. But at the end of the day, I think you said this too, this is not a series that we expected them to win. And it's sort of, let's move on to the opponents that you're going to be able to compete with and that you're going to be able to snatch wins from. I mean, Duke's not really it. And neither is Florida State coming up next weekend.
Yep. I think Florida State just took their surprise loss. So better steal the nerves. And that this is why I'm kind of wishing we had those this is
the
why
cancel games.
Yeah, the cancel games, right? So we're sitting at 15-5, still 10 games above 500. That's a great spot to be.
It's one of their best starts in forever, right? I mean, coming into this weekend, it was literally their best start in 12 years, right? And obviously, taking an ACC opening weekend sweep is rough, but I don't think that there's no need to hit the panic button here.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we need to hit the panic button. Like you said, I think this is the first time, especially with a couple notable freshmen and younger players on the roster, that they were seeing really good pitching. Maybe that pays off next week. Maybe they scratch 1 or 2 out. Obviously, sweeping Florida State would signal massive seismic shifts in the ACC softball world. But again, it's a young team. They're going to see plenty more this year. But in terms of getting those opportunities, you can't really, I guess, let them just kind of vaunt on or swing on by you, and it would have been nice to get one. But at the end of the day, like we said, still 10 games above 500. Obviously, the goal is to stay 10 or more games above 500, but
would be nice.
We look at this season as a long arc, right? They've played 20 games out of 50 plus, and they're playing Duke and Florida State, almost certainly the two hardest weekend series on the calendar, the first 2 weeks of ACC play. So this isn't a sign that we're up against the wall when it comes to the ACC. No, it just shows that I guess you take your lumps early and then you can get to work against the rest of the conference. Because you do, if you want to make the NCAA tournament, you're not missing the ACC tournament. You got to start there and build the resume past that.
So we're talking about that season as a long arc. Does this series and maybe a similar result this weekend versus FSU, does that change your expectations for this season? Does that change your, I guess, where you feel the team is at right now?
No, I don't think so. Again, it would have been, I think going 1-2 would have been a nice to have. Duke's really good. I think they're probably, if not FSU, like we said, if not FSU and Clemson, they're going to be a great team. I think Nelliman bounced back for a good outing on today, Sunday. 3 runs, like we said, is not a bad place to be. I think, again, it makes you wonder just what that ceiling is for Tech. Clearly, there is a ceiling, and it's not the top 3 spots in the ACC, unfortunately, unless, again, people make some strides, but they're going to have to pick up more pitching somewhere in the offseason, whether that's transfer or recruiting freshmen, and that much is pretty clear, I would think. Yes.
Well, as we've seen with the other stickball sport, pitching is a hard problem to solve, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Just to wrap up on softball, we said that they'll play FSU at home next weekend. They will also face Middle Tennessee State in the middle of the week. Just a quick note on FSU. That is your D1 softball, number 4 overall ranked team in the nation at 19-1.
Hey, Pitt did it. There's
Pitt beat them 7-5 today.
You got to start somewhere, right? And that's just picking up a win against a solid team would be great. And I don't think it's being a downer to say 1 out of 2 in Duke, 1 out of 2 against FSU. That's not bad. That's better than we've been. Not getting run ruled, better than we've been.
Absolutely. Let's talk about another team that went 2-1 on their weekend, like Florida State softball did. Georgia Tech baseball won the first 2 games of clean old-fashioned hate and dropped the Sunday game at Coolray Field. They are now 10-2 on the season. You watch bits and pieces of these games, I imagine. I caught, I think, most of all of them, I think, other than the Friday one, because I was at the softball park. What were your thoughts overall on the series? I know I'm not selling this particularly excitingly. I am very excited about this win.
You were extremely downer in a lot of the notes for a lot of the sports. I got to say that. I was like, geez, man, we're going to sound like we just lost everything in every sport. But, we bounce back and we'll we're going to make sure that y'all hear things as they are. And quite frankly, 2 out of 3, what have we been saying all year, is not bad. D1 baseball openly admits that they see a series win as, the goal, right? 2 out of 3 is a win, is a win, is a win, is a win. Georgia, solid team. Georgia, solid pitching. Georgia Tech, Saturday, really solid pitching. I think there's things that we can glean. One, that our hitters for 2 out of the 3 games were really, really good. Scoring 11 against an SEC solid team, scoring 7, SEC solid team, that wins you ball games, and it won them ball games. Obviously, there are the carve-outs of a bullpen meltdown that we all have come to know and love on Friday, and even one today to put the game kind of out of reach. But I don't know. The long arc is our pitching looked good. The players that needed to look good looked good as well. And again, a series win is a series win. I think Georgia Tech has some pretty clear work cut out for it. But I'm pleased. I don't think you can upturn your nose at a series win against the boys from Athens. So.
Oh, absolutely not. I'm not really turning my nose at anything per se, but I think today was not, and obviously sample size, but today was not a particularly banner day for a unit that we have already been looking at with raised eyebrows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that eighth inning on Friday, in which Tech gave up 7 runs to bring the bad guys within, I think, 1 run, was not ideal either. It was just like you said, but like you said, I think there's just a bunch of positives to take away from this, especially at the plate. I think there's a lot of patience shown, a lot of that their pitching is not as good as our hitting. So let them walk you, find your pitch, make them throw you strikes, that sort of thing. There was a lot of patience at the plate, which I think really paid off when you see runs scored in bunches, runs walked in. I think some of those approach elements have paid off.
But even then, we tagged their Friday starter ace, Jonathan Cannon, for 6 runs and 6 innings pitched.
Oh, they didn't pull him either. They refused to pull him. They let him die by that sword.
Mm-hmm. They showed that they can attack elite pitching, and I think we've always known that this team was going to live and die on the bats and having to slug their way to wins. But even then, on Sunday, there's some great takeaways, not only from, Maxwell being able to pitch out of a jam. Not great that he's in jams, but, pitched
he got out of it.
2, man, I really want to say this right because I am flying by the seat of my pants. So give me 1 second to vamp. But closed out by a 9-out save, not save because they were winning by enough that it wasn't a save, but Infinitary looked great to close the game.
Yep.
But my star of the series or of the game, I think it almost certainly it has to go to Cody Carwile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was a lot of lead up, but that's a name I don't think we've ever said on this podcast.
He is a freshman, I believe, and I have to pull up the roster now to double check and get his bio right. So you keep talking and explain.
Yeah, no. So Maxwell pitched 3 innings, kept pitching out of jams, a lot of runners left on, but that's life. I think it's worth noting that he only gave up 2 hits, but 6 walks is a lot of walks and 7 strikeouts. So it's the Zach Maxwell experience that we've known and loved for the last 2 years, right? So that's the prone to walks, prone to getting outs by strikeout. And not many people can really come around and get a bat on the ball, hit or not. So that really means that only of the 17 batters that he faced, that only with the 2 hits and the 2 outs via ground or fly out, only 4 batters got around and put the ball in fair play. So that's a pretty low number if we're going to be thinking about it like that. And for Carwile to come in relief in a rivalry game on the road, to get a strikeout and a walk, and the rest are taken care of in due order. He faced other than the walk, it would have been the minimum. Like, he's not giving up hits either. That's a pretty good spot to be. And then, like we said, Finiteri, 2 hits, 3 innings pitched, no runs, 5 strikeouts. I was kind of surprised after seeing that he wasn't the Sunday starter, but I
was surprised that they threw him. I understood the situation that they were in on the road where you need outs to seal this game, especially after a bullpen malfunction, if you will, in the first game. I understand the situation that you're in there. It was interesting to me to put Finiteri in that spot. But like his namesake with a V, he did pull it off. So gotta give him props for clutch moments there.
Yeah, for sure. It's also worth noting Chandler Simpson on Friday and Saturday was 6 for 9 at the plate.
Very nice.
That was pretty great. And then I think it's also worth noting from Friday, Georgia Tech's attendance 3,400 for a baseball game in the regular season is better than we've seen at Rusty C in a long time. And I've adjusted my tinfoil hat rantiness about this rivalry going to a weekend series, missing out on some more, on having another series like the UCLA one, whatever. We had a great turnout in Atlanta, solid turnout in Athens, even among Tech fans, from what I've heard from people who went. And I think my only thing remaining is they should play the Sunday game at Truist. I'm going to die on that hill.
I will. I think as long as it's in Lawrenceville, I will refuse to drive out there. It is way too far. It is just way too far.
I don't need to go to a AAA park to watch Georgia Tech play baseball. I mean, it's not fundamentally any better or nicer than the Rusty C. It's maybe a little bit bigger, right? It probably seats like 8,000 or 9,000, but I don't know. Part of the allure of that and part of the whole, for the kids thing, was playing it in the really big park and trying to pack that out. And I think for a Sunday game in Atlanta, before the Major League Baseball season even starts, you could probably sell 25,000 plus seats.
And especially when the Major League Baseball season is currently on indefinite pause, you could probably sell more than 25,000 seats.
If they were to slapdash a game together for the week before the ACC tournament and Major League Baseball still not playing, you probably sell out Turner with rabid baseball fans, or not Turner, Truist.
You might still sell it. You might play it on the football turf at Turner and still sell it out. Let's be clear. Sure. I think that is also my regret, is that it's in Lawrenceville and not closer to town, even if it's still virtually impossible to get to Truist. It's even more virtually impossible to get to Lawrenceville on your average Sunday. But, it's all for charity. And so I think attendance was good today. That it was, again, beautiful day to go to the ballpark. So I think everyone had fun. Talking about baseball upcoming this week, they will play Mercer. Really fun note here. Mercer has decided to have a promo where the first 200 fans in the door get bug spray, which is a very good, very funny promo. It's like almost AAA baseball levels of promo memeing. And then the weekend series is versus Virginia Tech.
Yep. That is an interesting one to look out for, because Virginia Tech has had a pretty solid start for the year, have they not?
Virginia Tech has only lost one game.
I don't know how I feel about that, but who is it to, perchance?
Well, let's talk about their opponents, shall we?
Sure.
Their opening weekend series was versus UNC Asheville. They had one game that looks like it was canceled versus East Tennessee State. They played a 3-game set versus Fordham, a midweek versus High Point, and then a 3-game set versus Wright State, in which they lost the Friday opening start 11-5.
Yeah. Asheville, looking at the rest of their schedule, their wins have all come against Niagara. So not sure how good of a barometer they are, but they got swamped by Tennessee and lost to, of all teams, Mercer twice so far this weekend, and maybe another one coming up today. I haven't seen the results from that. So interesting to see there. Fordham also bad. They destroyed Sacred Heart, but haven't really done much of anything else. And then obviously we know Wright State from, our
personal experience
encounter with Wright State. So
the encounter at Farpoint, if you will. The thing with Virginia Tech is they have not played nobody, huh? They really have not. And it's going to be an interesting test for both teams. Tech with a slightly harder schedule. I mean, I think having Athens on the schedule makes it considerably more difficult. But at the same time, you played Southern, Mercer, Wright State. It's still a bit of a cavalcade cast of characters beforehand. So it's going to be an interesting test. of who is really going to challenge for that Coastal Crown.
Yeah. Obviously, this comes with the caveat that conference play hasn't started yet, and my model doesn't take into account non-conference strength of schedule because I don't know where to find that for baseball. But in terms of the Coastal prognosis, it's kind of worthless, frankly, to look at that until I think we start playing these conference games, right? You can't assume that Wake Forest is going to be going undefeated in non-con. It's just probably not going to happen. Or UVA being, I guess, 11-0 themselves. They're not going to be undefeated forever. UVA traditionally very, very solid baseball program, but I think it's tough, at least in my opinion, looking at that first conference weekend or the first two conference weekends, and we can kind of say the same thing about softball or basketball too, of knowing just how it's going to shake out when Georgia Tech's played a top 25 team, gotten some road experience in a rivalry series, and VT's out here playing a bunch of teams that have combined for 6 total wins in almost 40 attempts. So,
womp womp. It'll be interesting. I think the sum total is that it'll be very interesting to see where both teams are at, and also learn a little bit about what the rest of the conference looks like that first weekend. Right. As other teams open conference play, you mentioned Wake Forest. Let's see if they can keep up their momentum in conference play. Let's talk about UVA and how they look in conference play. Who is that as UNC, who is another team projected to be really good this year? If they figured out their pitching, have they figured out their pitching? I think there's a lot to learn now that we have a sizable sample from non-con.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that you can really discern is BC's not going to be that great again, and other than that, like everyone wrote off Duke until they made it to the ACC tournament and then won the dang thing. So obviously, we need to pick up wins so that way we're not in the spot of needing to pull a Duke come conference time. But
two of three.
You'd like to sweep them all and you'd like to win the Coastal, but you got to start somewhere. And I think that minimum floor is going to be 2 or 3 for sure.
Cool. Let's move on to our first indoor sport of the weekend. That is swim with the NCAA Zone B diving championships. Those are actually still ongoing. Cami Hidalgo is still competing. She's already qualified for the NCAA diving championships in the 1 meter dive. I saw one healthy scratch from Georgia Tech swim as well. And then we had one other note come across our desk this week. Mackenzie Campbell has qualified for the NCAA championships in the 400 IM, 200 IM, and 200 fly. I don't exactly remember what that qualification is from. I didn't see a meet attached to it. Maybe you can shed a little bit more light on the subject.
Yeah, almost all qualifying times, especially the best times that wind up getting used, do come from the ACC or the conference championship meets in general. So yeah, Campbell's times are all a la those ACC championships. It is one more event than she swam last year, so that's great. And getting Hidalgo into as many events as possible is the goal and necessary, because she is the reason that Tech women got 28th in the country last year, almost single-handedly. We did have, I think, a point or two come from other diving options, but really Hidalgo has been the meat of that performance the last couple of years. So definitely looking ahead to the rest of the week to see how that shakes out.
Cool. NCAA championships, the aforementioned NCAA championships that will be hosted at Macaulay Aquatic Center. Those are this next 2 weeks, I believe, or is there one more week before they go into play? No, there's one more week, right?
Yeah, because the rest of the week is zones, and those will go till like Wednesday, and then we'll pick up on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week for the women, and then the week after that is the men. I will say having them combined for the ACCs was great, but there's no way that is feasible for the NCAAs.
Yep.
especially with the kind of attendance we get. But this is your like once every 5 or 6 years opportunity, if you are a fan of fast swimming, to see the very best, in my opinion, non-Olympic, non-US Olympic trials meet. And honestly, because it's college sports and college sports makes everything a little bit more fun to be invested in, might be
A little
even
bit more weird.
better. So yeah, definitely fun. And it's short course. I love short course. I swam short course. I don't like long course, so I'm biased.
Long course is
should be a lot of fun.
lame. Yeah,
It's,
the short course versus long
not
course thing
fun.
is a flame war in and of itself, I feel like.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that is coming up over the next 2 weeks. But in the last 2 weeks, we had a golf in action. They were ranked 12th the last time I checked. They've moved up to 11th after a win at the Watersound Invitational, and then a 5th place finish at the Southern Highlands Classic. They have next week off just to think about how they've done so far this spring season. Well, how would you say that they've done so far in the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, the Waterstown was great. I know we haven't had the chance to unpack it on the podcast yet, but that was basically the entire ACC playing the course that the ACC championship is going to be contested on, plus Arkansas and Alabama, who are both solid themselves. I think Arkansas is a top 10 team still. But so, yeah, great to see there. No complaints at all. They look great. Hopefully they play just as good on the course coming up because in later in the spring, because, we do want Tech to still have the most ACC titles in a sport, and that's currently what they have in golf. So always fun to see. In terms of the Southern Highlands, that was out in Vegas. There was a lot of quality competition out there. Oklahoma's the number 1 team in the country. They won because they're really freaking good. They were followed by Pepperdine, another top 5 team. And then we also had Texas and Florida in the mix. Georgia Tech got 5th, as we noted, just edging out the boys in Athens. So tough week to be an Athens fan relative to clean, old-fashioned hate. And then Tech did vault them in the standings because of that. We also saw New Mexico, who's a top 30 team. Tech edged them out. Illinois, a top 20 team, and Northwestern, a top 40 team. Northwestern did not have a great week, but yeah, no. Georgia Tech also notably saw Ross Steelman, who had an okay performance out in Vegas, but who has had a fantastic month. Get named the co-ACC player of the month or golfer of the month, and he had a great February. So no questions there. I think that's great because honestly, with how Bartley Forrester, Krista Lamprecht, Connor Howe, among others, have been playing, quite frankly, I think not that all of them could have been in the mix, but it hasn't been bad at all. That's the
Not bad, he says.
Yeah.
Not bad. He can't find another word to be beneficial.
No, Tech's been really solid, and it's been fun. This is a team that's been really solid for a long time, and it's good to see them kind of getting back to expectations. And really, they only had one down-ish year in which they were still a top 25 team. So
if your floor is top 25, you're doing something right.
And that's the thing too, is they've been quietly really excellent up there at their practice facility on 16th for, well, whenever they finish that and add 20 years before. Georgia Tech golf's really good. And part of me scared for what happens when Bruce Hepler finally decides to hang it up, but that's a future problem. And for now, they are really, really solid. So
we are kicking that can absolutely far down the road. Let's talk about a group of people that runs very far down roads. Georgia Tech track is a good segue. Good segue. Georgia Tech track.
Some work tonight, I'll tell you that.
ACC indoors were a couple weeks ago. We missed that while one of us was on vacation. Nicole Fegans won the 3,000 meters. I think that's the event that you said that she won. I double checked it totally. And she set another school record, if I'm not mistaken, too. Anything else notable from this one?
Tech has had more depth in the past, And that is a particular issue in this sport and something we've noted for them in the past. So I'm not going to dwell too much on that. It's a school that's produced a lot of very good, very exceptional individuals. Nicole Fegans being the latest, and honestly, in many events, greatest among them. But pretty tough sled down ballot, if you will. So not gonna harsh too much on that. It's not like we expected to compete for the conference or team NCAA title, anyways. So just hoping that our individuals, Fegans in particular, at indoors do have a good show, and then it's on to outdoor season.
Yeah, we are still waiting on NCAA indoors, and then, like you said, NCAA outdoors, closer towards the end of the spring semester. Let's move back indoors to talk about women's tennis, who is currently ranked 37th in the nation. They played a 5-game slate while we were out of office. That is a 7-0 win versus Mercer, a 4-3 loss to Miami, a 4-3 win versus FSU, a 5-2 win over Syracuse, and a 6-1 win over Boston College. All those last 4, they opened ACC play. So what is your take on where this team is at right now?
Yeah, I think they're finally coming into form. Mercer was a much needed W. 7-0 is a confidence builder, of course. Miami is a top 15 team. Miami's kind of, I guess, taken the spot Tech has kind of filled in the conference in the past. That mid top 25-ish team. It was almost a win. It was a 4-3 loss. Georgia Tech came so close to turning that one into a nice road upset, but then bounced back, handled Florida State 4-3. That's a team that they've struggled with a little bit in the past. Syracuse 5-2 win on the road. Syracuse, again, a team Tech has kind of faltered with in the past. They played Syracuse last year, I believe, without Kenya Jones, because I distinctly recall Vicky Flores playing on court 1, and that being a heck of a match. I don't think I've ever been more mad at a test match than that, but it feels good to see Syracuse lose in a lot of ways, in a lot of sports. Men's basketball, sorry. But
ACC elite women's tennis, Jake.
Yes, exactly. Giving them a 5-2 win. You only need 4 points to win, but putting a little space between you and the competition is never a bad thing either. Quite frankly, this has been, 3 straight road wins, and the team has needed to come into form, and they have. Obviously, there's meatier parts of the schedule left. UNC is always very scary, and those Tobacco Road schools really beat the cover off the ball. But no, and then you do need to beat Boston College for just, I guess, always. They're not the greatest tennis team. They're not the greatest swim team. They're trying, and they field a lot of sports in a lot of different sports, and I really respect that. And I'm going to leave.
They're getting a lot of fresh air and exercise, Jake.
Yes, exactly. I don't think you can play outside in Chestnut Hill this time of year, but Tech women's tennis will be interesting to see if they move up at all the team rankings on the 9th Wednesday, which is the next time these are going to be released. I mean, obviously we've already seen the FSU win factored in, but beating Syracuse and BC by a combined 11-3 is never a dull thing. So good to see.
Yeah, Tech women's tennis will round right into form as they head back to Ken Byers versus Louisville and Notre Dame later this week. Let's flip over to the men's side of the tennis complex. They are ranked 44th in the nation. However, their last 2 matches have ended in defeats, both to Notre Dame and to Louisville earlier today, both of them in 4-3 fashion. They are actually off next week for some weird reason because scheduling never makes sense. But what does make sense to you about this men's tennis team?
I want to leave that in the air for just a second because they've had a really bizarre ACC schedule so far. 3 of the first 4 weekends not having matches. That's really strange. It's hard to get in a
There's got to be a team that doesn't. There's got to be another team or another program in the ACC that doesn't have a men's tennis program.
Yeah,
right. Like, because that was the only way that a round robin schedule would make sense.
I know for a fact that Pittsburgh doesn't. I'm going to look through the schedule and just start naming teams because now I want to know. FSU, Miami, Wake, NC State, North Carolina, Duke, BC, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Louisville, Notre Dame, and then Georgia Tech. So we're missing
that's 13.
Syracuse and Pitt. So yeah, that is a weird.
That makes
number.
sense. Yeah, that
Weird
actually makes sense because they'd be filled in with Syracuse and Pitt in those 2 empty weekends.
Yeah. Go figure. And the women are off balance because they have a Syracuse, but not a Pitt. So go figure. Again, I've said that twice. Shame on me. Georgia Tech fell to Notre Dame 4-3 on the road. It was the doubles point that did them in. Interestingly, they did split the doubles teams again. Chen Dong and Andres Martin were playing on one court with Keshav Chopra and Marcus McDaniel on the other. Interesting there. I don't hate it. I think that's very interesting, and I like to see the doubles pairings get shaken up at least a little bit. In terms of action in singles, Tech actually cleaned up on the bottom 2 courts with Pablo Shelcher playing on court 6, which that's the lowest we've seen him in a long time. Definitely.
That's an interesting placement for him, I will say.
Yeah, and then
a little bit of gamesmanship.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon McKinney on 5. That was a 3-setter, but he did win. Shen Dong took a tough 7-6 loss in the first set, and then always tough to come back from that. So he fell in 2 sets. Keshav Chopra, who probably could have pulled one out, but did lose a break or 2 to go 6-3, 6-4. Marcus McDaniel did win on 2. Those were back-to-back 7-6 wins in the second and third set. So that's a hell of a match right there. Andres Martin took an unexpected loss on 1. So that makes the difference right there. But Notre Dame is number 32. So not a bad team. It's always nice to get those road wins. Not terribly worried about men's tennis at the moment because Louisville is also a top 50 team. Tech lost the doubles, and then Andres Martin took another loss on 1, but McDaniel, Chopra, and Dong this time did the winning, while Shelcher and Guerrero took losses on 5 and 6. So I really think, looking at all of this, the summary, and sorry for rambling, everyone out there, is that what's going on with Andres Martin? That's complete conjecture on my part, but seeing him losing as good as he is twice in 3 days is pretty out of the ordinary, I'd say.
This is going to be a recurring bit that gets as heated as the "What's Wrong with Freddie Freeman" article from a couple years ago that immediately kickstarted a massive power surge for him. I think we need to channel that same energy.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope it does. Tech's currently sitting at 5 and 6 in duels play. They are probably going to be 5 and 7 after the next competition. That's UVA coming to town, and we've already played them this year, so we know how that goes. But they'll have Virginia Tech and Clemson and Boston College 3 in a row after that. So hopefully enough to bounce back before Tobacco Road time, and then Florida before the end of the year. So got to start piling up some wins before the ACC tournament. Got to be above 500 to make it to the big dance. But they've played a pretty tough schedule so far, and they're definitely they're in the mix. That's how I'll say.
Cool. Let's talk about another team that's in the mix at an ACC tournament. Let's talk about the defending ACC tournament championships, Georgia Tech men's basketball. This past week, they took a close loss at Clemson at Little John, and then had a close win versus Boston College on senior day. So now with the regular season over, I think we've talked a lot about this team and sort of adjusting our expectations. They're playing on day 1 of the ACC tournament again, as God intended. What are your thoughts sort of wrapping up the regular season what have you learned from this team about Josh Pastner this year?
Yeah, I don't think this team did themselves any favors in terms of defense, but the foul discrepancy again against BC was pretty noticeable. I don't know if it's a me thing or just being a little bit concerned that it did seem like a lot of soft contact. I mean, I don't want our players to be playing dirty or anything like that, but it's either something that's solvable or something that hasn't been called in the past, or it's something that is being one-sided. I don't think it's the latter. I don't think it's the middle, and I don't really think it's the former, which leaves me with no good options. I think it's a relatively young team still, even with Usher and DeVoe playing a
and we've talked about how them being in the middle of a transition actually has hurt them this year too.
I think it'll be interesting next year to see who steps up as a leader. I think probably Jordan Usher would be considered someone who filled those shoes this year in the absence of Jose Alvarado, who was quite literally the heart and soul of the team for 4 years. Those intangibles are tough too, right? If you're new to the league and you're playing tough defense in a tough defensive system for the first time, I think this was pretty much the accumulation of all that. That being said, Pastner's second season wasn't too great either, and that was with Okogie being the talented wonder kid that he was. So I don't know. I think I'm more hopeful than I was after that season. I know this is a little bit contrived, the comparison, but bear with me. But then again, the season's not over yet, right? It's tough. You got to win 5 games in 5 days, but you play because it's March and right now it's tournament time. I just want to see one day at a time. I think we have a decent shot against Louisville, who's been reeling since their coaching hullabaloo happened mid-season. I think we're probably the I don't want to say scariest, but definitely one of the more talented teams to be playing on the first day. And I don't know. We got a shot day one. I'm not going to say we're going to win. That's silly. But we gave Louisville a pretty good ball game first time around. And if not, it's on to next year. And there's a lot of talent waiting in the wings. And I think in terms of what we saw this year, Miles Kelly's only going to get better. Debo Coleman was good and is only going to get better. Tristan Maxwell is hopefully going to be able to have a full, healthy season. Rodney Howard got better, and that's been a big thing that we missed, especially early in the year in some games that we had the opportunity to win, Wisconsin in particular. And then I am excited for Jalen Moore. That was one thing I took away from Saturday as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Louisville game, the aforementioned day one game at the ACC tournament, that is March 8th. So that is Tuesday at 7 p.m. I assume that's on the ACC network. I hope it's not on the RSN.
Let's go take a look. Ramblinrec.com.
I should have prepared for this.
I'm really providing some inspiring content. It's ACC network. You can listen live on the Georgia Tech radio network as well. 93.7 FM, 680 AM. Yeah, that's in the Barclays Center in New York. If you're in the area, go check it out. I guess I will not be there because Barclays Center is far away from my employment and house, but should be solid.
Darn.
I mean, I'm a little sad it's not in Greensboro. I thought that was fun last year and a lot more accessible to a lot of us. But
Jim Boeheim hates Greensboro too much.
Hey, Jim Boeheim, his team full of Boeheims, all in the family, whatever sitcom name you want to use to call that. He needs a couple wins. Otherwise, he's going to be taking his first losing season for the first time in a long time. But don't cry for them, Argentina. Like it's Syracuse. I have no pity.
It's Syracuse indeed. Let's talk about an ACC tournament that just wrapped up for the women's basketball team. Before the aforementioned ACC tournament, they played FSU, which they lost in OT. They played Wake for the first time in a week. That was a meh kind of victory. They played Wake a second time in the opening round Actually, it wasn't the opening round. I think it was the second round of the ACC tournament. That was a nice little win, and then they sort of lost by double digits to Notre Dame in the quarter final. Selection Sunday is it Selection Sunday or Selection Monday? I can never remember when it comes to the women.
It used to be Selection Monday, but now it's Selection Sunday, and it'll be the 13th.
Well, there you go. Selection Sunday is next week. The last bracketology update that I saw had Tech at a 6th or a 7th seed, so a bit of a precipitous fall from a top 16 national seed that we were talking about approximately a month and a half ago. What were your thoughts on this sort of last couple of weeks of the season heading into hopefully, and I mean, I assume another ACC or NCAA tournament berth?
Yeah, I think the last couple of weeks being what they were kind of clouds us to the great season that they were putting together before that. 21-10 almost certainly should earn them a pretty solid seed in the tournament. Recent record notwithstanding, their body of work is pretty excellent. I sound like I'm justifying all this to you. You know exactly where I'm coming from.
I know. Make your case.
I think your take here is right. NC State did a number on this team, and they haven't been quite as confident or quite as effective since then. I think the defense hasn't been there, and that was the hallmark of this team, even when they struggled offensively, was just playing absolutely lights out defense. And I don't know if that's whether exhaustion or injuries, or the dings and dunks of regular wear and tear in practice are wearing on them. I'm not really in the place to just be conjecturing like that, but I don't know. If you have a lane, you have a chance, and that's the exact same thing. I think we need to take the exact same opinion we need to take about men's basketball. You got to win a couple games in a couple days, and apply it now here to the women. They should almost certainly, barring some, I guess, catastrophic snub, make the NCAA tournament, and that's why you play the regular season. And it'd be nice to win the ACC title, but with them, not doing that anyways, there's no crying there. If you looked at 21-10 blind and just saw all those results in a random order, I don't even think you'd think something was the matter with the team, but there is.
So I think there's a lot of good, but I think if you're like me and you're a bit upset, let's say a bit frustrated with the way that the season ended, I think it's entirely justifiable, right? I think there's a yin and yang. Two things can be simultaneously true, right? I have to add the yin to your yang here, right? It's frustrating to see them go from effectively a projected top 16 seed to sliding onto the sixth seed line, right? And it's just tough, especially when a bunch of these games late on, we were looking at, okay, we're sort of licking our chops here and being like, okay, they're going to finish strong in the regular season and then head into the conference tournament as a 3 or a 4. And they were down at 6, I think, 6 or 7. So looking at Selection Sunday, looking past Selection Sunday, I kind of don't know what to expect. Laurel Kubai, I know, has been banged up a couple of times the last couple of weeks. We're still sort of like you said, the defense has been it's taken a couple steps back over the last couple of weeks. The way that women's basketball works, it's at least conceivable to say like, hey, they'll win their first round game, but beyond that, I'm not really sure what the ceiling is, but in a negative way, if you get my meaning.
Yeah, and I mean, last year they were a 5 seed and almost lost to a 12 seed in the opening round. It's basketball. We got to play. Yeah. We got to appreciate this team. They'll get one more ride, and hopefully it goes. 6 games or whatever, the 64, 32,
16,
4, 2, 6 games. Hopefully it goes 6 games, and if it doesn't, then they had a great run and pretty comparable to last year's team, and you got to refuel and reload and see how that fits into Nell's vision for the future.
Last thing before we get out of here, you're completely blind, not looking at the bracket. The bracket's not even existent. Championship pick for the women's basketball tournament. I have
good.
one. I'm thinking of one right now.
Zona's pretty good. I think this might be the year NC State finally breaks through, though. They're really, really good.
Okay. I'm gonna go with 2021 national runner-up Stanford.
Of course, it's Stanford. Everything's always Stanford. Come on. I'm gonna go buy a Cal shirt from home just to spite you.
Everything's Stanford, he says. He's going to buy a Cal shirt, he says, on a Georgia Tech podcast.
Just to spite you, as good friends do, you know.
Spite really makes the world go round. Anything else before we walk out of here virtually?
Nope. That's that. I'm reading Loserville. It's pretty good. Still recommend it. No free ads in terms of other things.
Technically, you paid for the book, so it's not a free ad.
Not one, but two restaurants I like in Atlanta are permanently closed. So I'm currently dealing with that trauma. But yeah, no, if anyone knows what happened to JCT Kitchen, I'd be really curious to know.
They charge too much for their fries is the problem.
That's probably true. That's what makes it a once a year restaurant, not a once every month restaurant. But
deep lore. $2 signs, Jake. $2 signs.
$2 signs. If anyone is at Rusty C next Sunday, feel free to drop by and say hello, because I will be there as well. And in the meantime, I think that about does it for me. How about you?
All right, plug our stuff and let's head out of here. It's 8:00. It's time for food.
From the rumble seat at gmail.com, from the rumble seat.com, at FTRS blog on Twitter. You can find me at jgrant98 on Twitter. And you can get this podcast wherever fine podcasts are shilled. I think that about does it. And also, if you're at Macaulay, feel free to say hello to us as well. We will be around and catch you on the flip side.